Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a Thursday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Today is January 12th, 2023. You better be out of vacation mode because the year is already underway. I hear all the time, right? Certain parts of the world, hey, we kind of take the holiday, right? All the way into the middle of January. Well, you better put that, away and on the shelf, and let's get back to the grind because man, I've lost track on how much business has been done from like the second week of December until now. It's just been absolutely amazing. I've heard this now all over the place. I've heard some people are like, hey, I tried to take off that week in between Christmas and New Year's, but it just didn't happen. So I've talked to many people across the spectrum. I'm hearing it across the board. Let's get all these things in now before, what all the industry finance talking heads have been saying going into this year happens. Get it in now. How about that? Although I did talk to a guy earlier today that said that he thinks that this industry is one that isn't necessarily going to be affected as much by recession. We've heard that as well, but let's not let's err on the side of caution, shall we? Two special guests today. One, both of these gentlemen, I think you've seen in one form or another across this series, but you have Mr. Kenny P back. Welcome, Ken. And Pete from Equilibrium. How you doing today, Pete? Oh, yeah, you got your new. Okay, hold on.
Oh, here it goes.
Hold on.
Here it goes.
We haven't seen that one come out in a while.
Yep, that's right. Because, listen, if you can go into Minnesota and take care of business, which you're capable of as the Giants, New York Football Giants, I am happy to open my doors and welcome all of you Giants fans to South Philadelphia because the NFC playoffs come through South Philadelphia, and we're happy to invite people into the frigid cold and, give you a little bit of Philly hospitality.
The funny thing about what George says is the only Philly hospitality you're going to be getting is from George. The other 60,000 Philly fans that are going to beat the shit out of you for walking in with Giants stuff.
Well, if you
actually,
remember,
I tell you, I used to go up where George is sometimes in nosebleed territory when he's posting, and I would wear my Giants, and I would go to 7, 8 Eagle games, and they would know me coming in, and they knew that one game I would be wearing Giants attire, and everybody'd be like, but you know what? They were pretty friendly about it. They knew that I had been there enough. So the people in the sections are always the same people in the same sections.
It's been a while since you've been to a game, I would assume, Pete, because when I bring people to games, I tell them exactly what they're going to expect. And, lo and behold, it's definitely fun watching what happens upstairs with the people while the game is, matriculating on the field. But
there's a lot of conversation going back and forth between yelling, but you dish it out and you thumb it up and it goes on.
I've seen many things go flying, people included, but
that's true. Hey, I can't say that pretzels and, of course, all of those good things, but
someone throws a pretzel at Pete, he's eating it. Just saying.
I might, but it might be too many.
The pretzel's like $8. I mean, that's an expensive pretzel.
Well, they should be throwing them around. I guess Philly's rich.
Yeah, I don't know about that. They surely, like any other stadium, you're stuck inside. You got to pay. I mean, it's funny because you go to the Super Bowl, and one of the things you see every year is like the thing that's usually like it's already expensive, but like just on the edge of tolerable. You go to the Super Bowl, and now it's like $25 instead of $8, and you're like, what the? And you're still stuck buying it.
Eggs.
Well, eggs, yeah, that's the new thing right now. All of a sudden, eggs are becoming like the new oil. Super expensive.
What's funny is regular old eggs are what everybody's like, talking about going up to $8. But believe it or not, if you go, the one thing apparently at Trader Joe's that's cheaper is eggs. The actual organic eggs are cheaper than these the regular old eggs that require more processing or whatever. Kind of an interesting, weird thing.
I just didn't realize how in demand eggs were until we started seeing the memes on all of the platforms, and I'm like, oh, okay.
We're lucky. Chris on our team has chickens. And they produce, he's producing 8 to 10 eggs a day.
Wow.
And when the eggs are there, if you don't wash them and do certain things to them, they last, right?
Huh.
So they last a lot longer when they're instead of the ones
So
that are
keep the
typically
mucus on
going.
the egg, it protects it.
Yeah, it actually does. It's got a protection. So, and of course, out on our farm, maybe one day we'll have our own coop with our own hens.
Interesting. Hey, let's bypass the supermarket. We'll just make our own food. It's
That's
interesting.
right.
But
That's
I'm
part
sure
of what
not
we're looking
everybody
at.
can do that, but hey,
Yeah.
when you can,
Not
you
me.
will.
Not
You don't
me.
want to.
I'll
You
go
don't
to the
want
store
chicken
to get
coop
my
in,
eggs.
no chicken coop in the backyard there, Ken?
No, only chicken coop would be, well, never mind. We won't go there.
So here we go. 2023. Obviously, there's always current events happening, and there's no shortage of things in
Stories.
technology land that are occurring. Other than it seems like there's a lot of people that have been cut from very recognizable names, and I feel like every week I see an announcement in the headline that so and so company cut 10% of the workforce. And I, like now all of a sudden in a field where technology had negative fillings of positions, right? Because there's more positions than there were people. It has definitely flipped around, right? There are now more people than there are positions. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, but what I'm also noticing, there are some companies hiring like crazy. I mean, we can throw them out there, and it'll only help them. But Nerdio and Quick Pass, like some of these companies are still doing very well and hiring at a pretty high rate. Like I feel like Nerdio has 3 new employees a week over the last month or so. So there has been a flip side effect of that. I think part of what you're talking about are these players that say, hey, we've been here a little while, but we haven't been in the channel. We're ready to take the channel on. And then they jump into the channel, spend like crazy, hire like crazy, and then they give up. It's almost like in Pete's world, people who think marketing happens in 3 or 6 months. It feels like they jump in, they think it's going to be the silver bullet. It's going to be magic. We jump into the channel, we get a couple people that people recognize, and boom, we're in the channel. And they give up fairly quickly, or they're not doing the things that they need to do. And then before you know it, those same names
all
are
right.
now back out there.
We went a little bit on the side path, right? Some of the companies that are being cut are like Citrix and Cisco and Microsoft and Google and Amazon, right? But let's talk about the channel for a second and what you're talking about. I mean, here's the misalignment, right? I don't think I've seen any company in a 12-month period who's come out of startup mode go into what we call this, or what at least I call the sandbox, and be able to matriculate quickly, right? I would say at the minimum, in order for any new entry into the space to have any real success, you're talking maybe 2 or 3 years, right? Like that's the beginning run, right? To kind of establish who you are, explain what your value is, get any sort of momentum. The problem is that when you're bringing on money, and in this realm, VC and PE seems to be one of the most, one of the most common ways these companies raise capital. They're already running on a 3 to 5 year clock. So there's a misalignment, right? If you need at least 3 years to establish yourself and begin to build momentum, and you're already on a 3 to 5 year clock, there, you can't wait that time if that's what the requirements are on the other side to turn turn that money that you're bringing in into something. So I think that's largely where there's misfiring, right? And whoever's telling these people, I don't know where they're getting their information from, to your point, Ken, that this is like a quick win. I've seen way more people come in 6, 8, 12 months, hit the red button, eject, cut the whole team and move on. Then I have people come in and gone the distance and succeeded. So,
but
it's
the other
almost,
side of that too is,
hold on. I was listening. Here's my analogy. I was listening to the radio today, and we always love people coming into South Philadelphia because it's cold and it's loud and there's beer bottles flying. Well, for football games and playoff games, but the Eagles, from a home field advantage in the playoffs, kind of 50-50, right? Like the argument is there an advantage historically? Okay, back to this point, I think that the odds flip the story around, and that the picture needs to be that there's a longer run in there. Go ahead, Pete.
I think some of it too, though, is the way that these the money is fed into these organizations to hire those teams. And then the pricing structure is out of line. So it's so heavily discounted to get subscribership on a lot of the SaaS companies that the spend is way ahead and it never catches up. There's no break even point. So they say, we're going to give it 6 months, but they're selling it at 50 cents a license when they really need to sell it for $1.25 a license.
Well,
They've discounted the product so much to try and get the attraction, and that alignment isn't there either.
I've already
that's a
I've
big
already
problem.
heard, but to your point, I've already heard like a true up on that story, because a lot of these new people aren't coming in and saying, hey, we're going to give you this price as a kind of early adopter and it's going to hold for eternity. They're like, hey, we'll give you this price for a year. Right. And now they're putting a time basis to whatever this special intro, please adopt my solution product is, which is how to offset what you're saying, Pete. Right. You can still, kind of put the carrot out there, bring them in the door, but put a time to it.
Right. But I think that's just a more recent adoption that we're starting
Correct.
to see, so a lot of these companies over the last 12, 15 months that, what did we see? We've seen at least probably 5 to half a dozen of these companies come in, spend 6, 7 months and say, we're out of the channel. We're going to go direct. We're going through distribution only. And that's how we're going to run our program. Right. Because that just wasn't aligned,
Well, I think part of the, like, I don't care who it is and I don't care where they started. Anybody that's ever, invested in a company that was channel focused, the first question they said is, when can we start selling into enterprise? Right. It's the first thing that comes out of the mouth of any investor. And it comes back to the whole model of, hey, there's some companies that have been successful in, becoming, starting as a channel only company and not creating conflict. And there's other companies that come the other way, right? They start off in enterprise, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, larger businesses, and then start to come downstream and then kind of hit a brick wall a little bit. So I'm curious, right? Because you guys are talking to people as often as I am. How often are you still hearing the gripe of, hey, I don't want to compete with my vendor, to an end user that could call that vendor directly and adopt that solution versus getting it through me?
Yeah, obvious. That's still a very real thing, as you know, right? And I just heard it on a level that I don't see happening, but even some of the bigger companies or the more mature companies are trying to find ways to help. Let's just say from an strictly MSP side, right? Some of the vendors and distributors are trying to find ways to go direct to the end users to help the MSPs. And then the MSPs are getting nervous about that, even that part of it, because they're saying, whoa, if you can go right to them, it's a double-edged sword, because it's like anything else we talk about. You've been burned so many times, you feel, remember when HP said they were, with us, and then we found out they weren't with us. And when Dell said they were with us and they weren't, the larger companies who said, oh yeah, we sell direct, but it's not affecting you guys. And then you found out that they were getting cheaper pricing direct than they were through any distribution program we could find. But there are vendors and distributors out there now who I don't think they would ever go that direction, because it's too much work. Nobody wants to do the work. Nobody wants to jump into doing the actual work piece of it. They'd rather the MSPs do the work, and they want to find a way to make that connection. But getting back to what you were saying, yes, they're still nervous about anybody eating their dog food, right? I mean, they want to be able to get out there and do their work. I mean, look, we still have people, even in this day and age, where we're trying to teach to get away from the castle mentality, as you call it, George, and break away from that, who still feel that other MSPs are the problem, as opposed to even the vendors. So, it's hard to break them away from one thing, but then, oh, by the way, you got to watch out for it over here. I think the vendors need to get better about it and how they do it and what they work, because there are still vendors that delve into that and definitely do have access to end users and say, well, if they're a certain size, we have to help them because they're not going to go to an MSP. Okay, sure, but how do you define that? Where is that defined? Where's the line
Well, I
that you
mean,
don't cross?
I think part of the problem in any relationship of this kind is data, right? So like, what are the data points? Well, if you ask your partners what's, how many customers do you service and what are the sizes of the customers you service?
Yep.
Once you get to like, I don't know, 200 and above, the list filters down to single digit percentages, right? I mean,
Yeah.
most of the people in this space probably don't, like they may have one customer of that size, but that's
Right.
it.
Well, and when you get up to that size, you're leaning more towards commit, and doing
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
No,
Right.
I get that. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I think, if you were to set a really high number, right? What if it's 500 and above? Now now it's like I could probably count them on my hands, right?
Right.
So like that's probably the demarcation point, right? Where like you're not going to create a conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got to make sure that they're sticking to that, right? One case where they stepped over that line is going to send the MSPs into a tizzy, right? It's going to make
But,
everybody think, holy
you
crap.
know, and I think, another thing is where is their product positioned best, right? A lot of times the product's not positioned to go upstream or downstream. So the adoption rates get tougher. And since they don't understand that model or the audience, as you would say, of where their tiers are of who they're addressing, bringing an enterprise class product down into SMB MSPs is tough, right? Because it's complex to use, it's complex to learn, it's another portal for them to take on, and they've already got 500 of them. I think a lot of times these vendors don't really look at the challenges of the MSPs before they jump in and expect that return.
Fair. That's fair. I mean, complexity, is definitely complexity, training, and implementation, right? I
Yeah.
kind of rubber band all three of them together.
Just throw one thing out there, SAP, and that'll just tell you all you need to know, right? You just throw something like that at the SMB.
We don't even have to go SAP. How about just Salesforce? That's not
Right,
necessarily
right.
either.
Yeah.
Lisa, how are you? Happy 2023.
Thank you. Hey guys, I'm a vendor and I would say support, right? Because and it's not necessarily someone who's supporting you guys, but from our standpoint, we've got 30,000 partners to support. Do we want to go now support 30,000 times 500 or 200 or 100?
Yep.
No way. Doesn't make any sense. We have our own issues with support, let alone trying to add end user support into the picture too.
It's so funny that you said that, Lisa, because just yesterday, someone asked me that question when I was about being at PAX 8 and said the very same thing. What's to stop PAX 8 from offering these bundles to direct and not having the MSPs do that? And I said the very same thing you just said. They have thousands of MSPs to support. They don't want to support all these end users and go down that road. It's much too much to take on. So that's a good point.
I mean, listen, and I think that it depends who you're talking to in the organization, right? You're talking to the sales leader or sales leaders. And if a big company comes through the door, that would be the equivalent of 50 or 100 downstream MSPs or resellers to that one customer. Sometimes they will take that one customer on, depending on the company, right?
I'm talking about as an actual company-wide move, like a move that would we're going direct.
For enterprise.
And again, being someone who knows the inner workings from just talking about PAX 8 as itself, I know that that's not the direction they would ever want to go. And I do know, and I do say, and I use them as a model of what's the right thing to do, because I know as they're working this out, the last thing they want to do, to Lisa's point, is take on that support, because the support that they're dealing with right now is already a bit overwhelming. I mean, you think about while I was there, an NCE thing got flipped. They did 55,000 tickets in a day when NCE got flipped over, right? And they were the only distributor to not get knocked out by that, which is pretty impressive. So for thinking about that, I know that you would never want to take on do you really want to take on the needs of what MSPs have to deal with, the end users that they deal with and the issues that come up?
This isn't hypothetical, Ken. I mean, again, not trying to point fingers, but Kaseya has a direct sales team and a MSP sales team, that sell and target and market and like go through the process every day, to the point when
all I can say is I can talk about how to do it right. And that's what I was talking about. The other thing, I'm not going down that road, but for me, saying the way to do it right is what their thought process is. And it really is about the MSPs, right? That's all about the MSP side of things. And to Lisa's point, I'm not sure what vendor she's with, but to her point, it's 100% accurate. If you know what you're doing and you're looking at it properly, there's a lot of sides to it, right? You don't want, first of all, do you really want to upset all your people that I'm a big community guy. Taking your community and turning it upside down by working against them, it doesn't work for anybody. But then
Sure.
on top of that, having to support all that extra stuff and get those, plus if you can help your community out by building them up and dropping stuff on them that's already done, hey, I did this bundle, this is what they have, it matches up to your, what you do. That's going to build your community up, right? The people are going to say, this is great, these guys do these wonderful things, and that's what they've done over the 4 years I
Okay,
was
but
there.
hold on. Let me flip it around another way.
Oh, I know
What
you will.
happens? Hold on. What happens? What happens if an enterprise company like maybe waters down their solution, right? Maybe makes it a little more basic and offers it as a separate SKU into MSP land, right? Now all of a sudden it's not the same product, it's at a different price point, and like ultimately it's not apple for apple. I mean, you find this in the big box,
Right.
Costco.
But are you saying they offer that directly to end users? Is that what
No.
you're saying?
No, I'm saying they offer a different SKU to end users, but what's offered through MSP land is a different SKU, different version of the product.
Oh, well, we already know there's many businesses that do that, right? We know that, I don't even know what the final company name, but WebRoot's a very good example of that. Back in the day when they had windshield wiper, I guess I'm dating myself, where you could get in Staples and buy windshield wiper, which was their cleaning, computer cleaning solution. They had all this stuff, and then they decided to go channel, and they switched that up. And I think they did back in the day a very good job of keeping them separate. I was in their corporate office once, and I got to see both sides of the business, which it's funny. The home user side, the phones were ringing and going crazy, and the MSP side, not so much. Much more, social, click links, text. So that was interesting to see. And they did a pretty good job of, having that fine line. The question always comes up, George, is are they doing anything crossover? Are they going direct because they have lists of people's direct contacts? And, we've seen companies do that. So it's all a matter of, is every vendor being above board with this? And when they do it, how are they doing it? Your example of, one case here and one case there, that definitely happens. We know that Datto had done that in the past and they would be honest about it. That's what made Datto great back in the day, is they would say, hey, look, no one's landing this $10 million end user for what their needs are. So we figured we'd help them, and they do it direct, and they would be honest about it. It's the ones that are doing it on a much larger case basis and going right directly after the clients and making a dent in maybe some of those customers, and the ones that are getting emails from those companies saying something different than what you're talking about when you're selling it to them.
Well,
Sure.
I mean, that goes where, a renewal notice gets sent to an end user that it's time
Right.
to renew a firewall software. That's a perfect example, right? Your subscription is up, it's time to renew, and then all of a sudden it gets forwarded over to the MSP and saying, why aren't you telling me about this? And then it creates this cycle and this spin of now the MSP is upset with the vendor, and the vendor's like, yeah, but we do that. That's what we
Right.
do. It's part of it's helping you to get better. But in the end, if the MSP doesn't do it, they're going to sell it direct. But
Sure.
to your point, they're not going to say we're going to sell it direct. We're helping you, right? We're helping your customer reach back out to you. That's
Yeah.
why we do it.
And the flip
right?
side too, George, is the same thing we always get back to. It's about education, right? The MSPs have to understand how to be better about what they're doing and how they're putting it out there. And, I always say, let's stop selling. We don't need to sell. We need to be more prescriptive because of what we do. And I still say we, because I was an MSP for longer than I've been on the vendor side. But it's all about educating and understanding that, first of all, a lot of this happens when you go to them and tell them every single piece of what you sell and what it is, as opposed to a package that you can change on the back end. They don't care about the tools. They just want to know what it fixes for them, right? What solutions it provides. So when you're not doing that and not having access to that, they don't really see that side of the business. And if something on the back end needs to be switched, you switch it, right? We talked about this. Hey, this weekend we're doing an update. You remove one, you add the other one in. If they're being educated about those types of things, and you're being above board with everything that you do from a standpoint of the business side of things, I don't see a lot of those things affecting that. Like perfect example is back in the day when Dell and HP were competing with us. I used to tell every customer, not right away, I learned it over time. Listen, you can buy this direct and probably get it cheaper for sure. but are you paying me for my expertise and how to keep that protected and how to keep that working properly and how to, procure the right device and do all the things that go along with that? That's what's built into that price, right? So I did pretty good with hardware back in the day because I was honest. I'm not going to be the cheapest. You can buy hardware anywhere, but you're not paying me for hardware purchases. You're paying me for the whole package for what we know. We're going to put the right box in the right place and we're going to protect it properly. And so as
They're
we start
paying
to
you
do that,
to do the research,
right,
and
exactly.
all
We're
of the
going to do
other
the
things that they
research. We're going
couldn't
to,
do.
And I started getting to the point where I didn't allow people who had their own equipment or did that stuff become a customer, become a partner, because we knew that we were going to be on the hook for that. Little did I know, not that I'm saying that I knew what would happen now more than ever, these MSPs have the liability hanging over their head for so many things. I think you got to take the Tech Vera way of my way or the highway, right? Remember, those guys would say all the equipment, at least at some point, has to be under our umbrella. You have to have a path to get there, or else we're not taking you on as a client. Love that approach.
Well,
You know,
let's flip over to the other side of what's happening, right? I mean, I guess all the rage right now is Chat GPT from a company called OpenAI. I think Microsoft just put $49 billion or something.
Did you see the funny part about Chat GPT is we haven't been talking about Chat GPT. How long have we been talking about Chat GPT? Maybe a month? I mean, really, solidly, maybe. In that month's time, it went from what the hell's Chat GPT to, hey, this is kind of cool, to holy shit, schools are shutting it down because they're worried about cheating, to now it's hackable and you have to be careful of the hacks, the security side of the open AI stuff. It's just in that short period of time, we got a whole window of what happens to other SaaS companies.
well,
Yeah,
and we're even seeing like little user group forums trying to figure out what the impact to their business is going to be from end users. Like if an end user gets to Chat GPT, what do they need my help desk? Because you can just go in and type a question and it comes back with step-by-step instructions on how to fix something.
There's a lot of potential scenarios, but I think the big picture here is, hey, it's cool, it's a toy, it's like a step into this, automation, like AI automation, right? Past the automation we've been talking about for years. At the end of the day, I still think that there's a slippery slope here, right? Let me give you an example.
Yeah.
We don't have to go too far past December, since we're talking about it's only been a month or two. I mean, back to the Frontier Airlines example, right? Hey, can't call us. You can only chat with us. There's a chat bot behind there, right? And it's using similar technology as Chat GPT.
Yep.
We've seen companies try and go, no, we've taken the Frontier Airlines model of today and try and apply it to technology land, charge a really low price per endpoint, right? Like a stupid low price. You're just going to chat with us and you can't talk to a human being. And this is how we're going to deliver our service. It didn't scale.
But I will tell you that you're right about that. And companies like Crushbank are doing a pretty good job with the AI on the back end, where they don't tell you can't talk to a human, but their chat AI functionality is tied into so many other areas and learning that it knows how to give answers before you have to get to a human, so that it speeds up that process. So there are companies doing that piece of it. What I think from Pete's point about ChatGPT is right now, if you just want to strictly talk about positive, it's a great tool. Use it, but you got to proofread it. I think it was on our call, George, on the Thursday, the call that we have, the community call. Someone had mentioned, listen, I use ChatGPT for presentations. I plug in what my needs are. It punches it all out. And I use that as my first draft. And then I send it to the humans to pick it apart and make sure it's where it got. But it does save a lot of time in that first draft because it gives good points and gets you going in the right direction. And somebody just did a whole thing on CMMC on it, and it actually was pretty accurate. So it is doing that first step pretty well. Now we all know the bad things, the negative things that are going to happen. And, it also could someone could get in there and start spewing, the wrong information, and it could do the wrong things just from a simple hack.
Hey,
right?
Make me malware.
Right. Yeah. Right. Or somebody hacks into it and gives you a completely wrong answer, but because you're so dependent on ChatGPT, you just take that and use that out there.
Well,
I didn't even realize
I think
people are using it for posting now. Did you know that?
What?
People are plugging in something like information about a post, and it'll tell them what to post on social.
Yeah, I've heard this.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
you can write content, chat, put in an idea, and it'll give you it'll come back with a full paragraph of.
Yeah.
And we had
Except-
a customer actually come
except-
back wanting to write content
When the
using
same
ChatGPT.
content's being regurgitated to multiple people.
Yeah.
One, two, there's so many people using this right now. You get messages saying, sorry, we're busy, come back later.
Yes. Yeah. I thought I broke it the first time I plugged something in a little different. I was like, oh, I think I stumped ChatGPT, and it turned out the servers were just busy.
I will
Yeah.
tell you, about a year and a half ago, we took a look at a product called Word AI when we were writing content. And it was similar in nature. You could put in a topic and then it would come back, or it would look out to the web and look at a bunch of topics and then grab pieces of it and regurgitate it back to something. And it was bad. Grammatically, it was bad. Punctually, it was bad, because it didn't know some of the syntax or some of the proper ways to put the pieces that it was ripping apart back together. You fast forward in a short period of time and how mature the product, with ChatGPT is on the comprehensive side of what it can really deliver back to the end user. I mean, it's pretty impressive of where the product that we looked at, which was supposed to be like the number one in the space back then, to ChatGPT. It's
Wow,
pretty
it's-
impressive. It's really impressive.
This sounds like it's a 2023 version of, can you figure out how to actually do the math, or do you bring a calculator to do it?
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
All right. It's just an evolved version of that problem now.
Yep.
Because I was one of those kids. I was like, I'm never going to use this in the real world. Oh, yes, you will. I'm like, no, I won't. Well, you need to do it to pass this class. Okay, I understand. I digress. So
I
I think
digress.
so Microsoft has invested in half of this company. They now own 49%, I believe I read, or when the deal is done, they will own 49%. Another group will own the other 49%, and then there will be like a 2% holding company. But Microsoft's intent, from what I gather, is that they're going to include it into the Microsoft Office suite, so that effectively it'll just be a feature within the actual Office online and Office suite. So that's coming in the very near future. I'm sure there's going to be other implementations to this, and at some point people might pay. I think that's the whole point, right? How do I actually monetize this? They'll pay so that they don't get the, hey, we're busy right now, come back later, and get different access, right? But
Yep.
That being said, it'll be interesting to see how this evolves our sandbox. I still, and I mean, JetBlue was probably the first airline, since I use Frontier as my example. JetBlue, well, I'm talking like in the early and mid 2000s, right? They adopted, everybody working from home. There is no JetBlue call center. It's just people working from their homes. There's a corporate office where some managers exist, but that's it. And when you call in, you're talking to a human being in their, living room, basement, garage, whatever. I mean, you still got a hold of a human being, right? This whole, I can't get a hold of someone live when I actually need to solve a problem right now. I think that's a bad example of where this technology can be abused. And I think we've already started to see it in some of the larger companies, the cell phone companies, and like some of the, companies out there that are handling so much volume. They're not hiring more people. They're just augmenting it with this type of technology, which may help for a little bit, but I think big picture, I don't think you can completely cut out the human element.
I read a report on Verizon, because Verizon has, like, at 6 o'clock, they shut off human support, and you can only get, and they'll text to your phone. Well, that's great. What if your phone is broke? What if the technology is broke that you're receiving or need to receive the response on? Like, how do you, how do you get that support? You're calling from another phone that's not yours, and it's going to send the response to yours that's broke, that can't turn on, or the backlight's not working, or, and that, that goes back to a whole different support conversation. But, a thing that Veritas did, now I'm going to date myself as Ken did in a prior statement, but, and SAS has solved some of it by, being run by the manufacturer or the SaaS provider, where they can update when they want, and maintain the patches and the components on the back end. Veritas at one time, if you go back to the days of tape and tape drives, there were so many variables that they came up with 72% of their support calls were troubleshooting Windows or a tape drive, and not their software. it was a, you know, a code update that the drive needed, or some kind of controller issue or a driver issue, that was all part of Windows. And, you know, that's a pretty big number if you think about it. So, you know, SaaS has solved a lot of that problem, but, you know, the number of users way back then to the number of users now is exponentially grown probably too. So
Sure. Yeah, I think part of the problem is, and you know, we've heard about companies who start off small and then grow big, grow big, grow big, and then have to jump platforms altogether. Is there's so much technology underneath the hood? Like having like part of the reason why the sandbox has gotten to where it's gotten to, in my opinion, has been that the integration work was done for you, right? A lot of it. You didn't have to go and like take two products that have never talked to each other before and do this, right? You know, and then once you get to a larger realm, I feel like some of that is missing, right? So like that's kind of one of those glass ceiling points where, you know, it takes a huge lift to go to the next level because all of those links aren't there. I still think that the average technology company, IT services company, managed services company, I don't know, whatever you know acronym you want to throw against it, doesn't have enough internal resources from a development or DevOps standpoint to like equip, you know, really do that at any scale. Do you agree with that?
I would say, yeah, plan scale is not necessarily done right or thought of all the time in both directions. You know, whether you're scaling up or, you know, whether you're growing as an organization or you're an organization trying to come down and scale into a, you know, a different base or a different audience.
Yeah.
You know, the systems have to change to accommodate, you know, where you're going. And that's, you know, we have a partner right now that we deal with, and you do too. UK company, Signature Manager, and they just changed the partner portal. And if you're an existing partner, you have to go through the application process again. So
that kind of defeats
yeah. So
I'm already a partner, but I got to reapply.
Exactly. Right. So you've got.
Uh-oh, technical difficulties.
Elevator music.
There we go. Sorry about that. But you know, that's just one of those things that like now you're trying to support your customer and your partner has cut you off till they go through whatever their process is again to reauthorize you and get you in the portal. Like, how does that even happen?
Seems odd. Yeah. I mean,
You got to be careful there, because if someone comes to me and says you got to reapply, I may be reapplying somewhere else.
Well,
sure.
Go on, get.
Well, what was that, Lisa?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So how like do you believe that the, you know, back to the, you know, since you're talking about partners again, the bronze, gold, silver, diamond, platinum, universe, whatever level,
Precious metals.
Do you still think this works? I mean, like,
No.
I don't know. I feel like, you know, that's just the way it's always been, and nobody's gone, you know, is that nobody's like, well, hey, they did it. We'll just Xerox.
Here's the thing. Like I always say, there's no silver bullet, right? It maybe it works for some people. So I hate to shoot down something and be the person saying that'll never work, because it works in some places. And look, when I was doing it, the biggest thing that always happened was I always knew they were taking the middle. It was very rare that they were going for the low plan, because I would always kind of shoot at the high plan and then they would land in the middle, right? But now, as we talked about before, now more than ever, there's so much liability in the game that I don't think we can afford to leave stuff out of a plan. I think that every MSP has to offer this is the plan. It covers everything. You may not use everything in there, but it covers everything from a stand. Now, there are some things you can piece in and out, right? Maybe compliance, maybe, you know, HIPAA, whatever, some other things that you can maybe piece in separately, but the overall protection should all be rolled into your plan automatically. They need it. They should have password management. They should have MFA. They should have phishing education and phishing tools. And these things need to be part of the everyday fabric of what MSPs are offering, because if you look at the statistics, and I did this for 4 years going through statistics, Microsoft still to this point says over 95% of those hacks, of all the hacks that we've seen that happened, could have been stopped with MFA, password management, or education, which we know education is the biggest one, right? Some kind of phishing tool, but plus the education, some kind of scoring system, so that you know that, Jane will click on anything you send her and things like that, getting your people in the right state of mind and making sure you have the right people, in your organization.
So pause the thought, flip it around. Does
Yeah.
your vendor take the same approach with you? With their programs and their metal tiers for you to be able
Well,
to
is the vendors, are the vendors programs, vendors are a giant word. So I mean, because the vendors offer thousands of solutions, it's different. So I don't hold the vendors to that role unless a vendor was offering a security product that doesn't protect you 100%. If there's you know what, this is going to protect you against a couple things, but you also got to be careful of this. And if you want that, you got to pay me an extra $20.
I don't know. I haven't talked to a single security person or company that has said that their platform does it all. They say we help solve these
That's
things.
not true though, George. That's not
Layers.
true. Some of them do say that, and we always question why anybody would say that. But you're right.
Sure.
I'm not talking, but I'm saying to give them the best layers. I'll put it that way, to have the best layers of protection. But from a vendor perspective, like I said, outside of security, there's so many different things. And some of the things don't necessarily, plug in with every MSP. But as an MSP, what you're offering to your end users is security, a blanket, a protection. And most of those end users, like we talked about with backup back in the day, and we still talk about backup, they assume you're doing it all. Whether you tell them what you did and they don't get it, they assume you're doing it all. So in a backup failure, I've had, I've heard this story 1,000 times. Oh, the end user come at me and said, oh, you do that for me. And it's like, well, no, we talked about this 2 years ago. Well, you're kind of at fault too for not revisiting, paying attention, and being on top of them for the things that they didn't have, right? So now, making sure that they have SaaS backup, making sure that they have the security pieces that I mentioned, proper next gen AV, all things that everybody who knows this business knows you need should be part of your main package. There should be nothing lower.
It seems like half the battle then. I don't think you'll argue this point, but we'll see. Seems like half the battle then isn't the technology per se, it's the understanding of what is and what isn't, right? And there are companies that have popped up to help you do the, hey, here are all the categories that you need to understand, and here's the, kind of green, yellow, red, right? And like all of a sudden they look at it, they're like, why do I have all this yellow? And it's like, why is there all this red? Like you're trying to take something very technical and make it understandable by a not technical person. I feel like that's half. I literally feel like percentage-wise, 50% of the problem.
Right. And you don't talk about technical, really. You talk about, these are your issues. If you were hacked, if you lost business, how long could you be down? Could you live without your data? All these pieces that have to be educated to them and say, by the way, we can fix that by doing this. And there's no 100% fix, right? We know that's why we have to have layers. We have to have backup at every level. We have to be, all these pieces, all these layers come into play. And if they are better educated about those types of things, on top of, many more things that we talk about, being more, you're being more consultative, being more of a, prescriptive approach instead of selling them stuff. The problem is, and George, we were a part of this, maybe not you as much being a younger guy, but you definitely have been an MSP for a long enough time to know we're part of the problem, because initially we thought we had to go out and sell them shit, and we had to sell. And we got into that mode of, well, okay, we're not going to take this, but we're going to take this. And we let them piecemeal us to death. But on the other side of it, they started to think of us as used car salesmen, right? Oh, the MSP or technology people, they're going to come in and they're going to try to sell us stuff. And because they don't understand it, because they're not being properly educated to the needs, and because there are some immature MSPs out there that still take that approach and still try to get the sale and still try to drain as much money out of the end user. It's an uphill battle trying to come in and say, hey, we're taking this from an educational approach, and we just want to make sure that you're protected, whether it's with us or with another MSP. This is how we
but
take the
I
approach.
feel like what you're saying is a little bit counter to what we've heard forever, which is, hey, technology people aren't salespeople. They're really not great at sales and
From the
marketing.
other side, you're
and-
right, but that's the problem. That makes it even worse because as a technology person myself, I was taught, well, you got to go out there and sell. You got to sell. Everything's about making the sale. And you're a technology person, but you're a pretty damn good salesperson now because you've learned over time. We're not the best at it. We're not, but again, how do we as MSPs get better? Well, we learn how to educate instead of sell. We know how to do that better. And as long as we learn how to talk to the end users and not at them and not try to sell them stuff, the same way we want vendors to do the same thing to us as MSPs, that same approach that goes both ways, that same approach needs to be taken right across the board. The vendors need to talk that way to the MSPs and get the MSPs on board from an educational standpoint. And then the same goes for the end users. We need to teach them what could happen, how, and that they have problems and we have solutions. Like I said, be more of the doctor, be more prescriptive.
But
I hear you.
That's
and I
also the
subscribe.
MSPs. I'm sorry, George. I mean,
No, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the MSPs have to do a better job of training their salespeople too.
Yes, that's
So
what
they
I'm
have to
talking about.
understand,
This is the
they
MSP
have to get
space.
into what the product is, what the product isn't.
Time. Well, but
What?
if if like 75% of MSP land is owner-led sales, right? Because the majority of MSPs are like 10 people and below.
But to Pete's point, if they do have salespeople, they have to learn to educate too and stop selling. And listen, I've been a big proponent of this since before all this came up, and I don't take credit for it. Back in the day, remember Tiffany Bova, who was a big voice in our industry, still is, but a little bit less than she was over the earlier years. She gave a speech in front of a big crowd of MSPs and told everybody in the room to go back and fire their sales teams. Now, she didn't mean that literally, but people got freaked out. Yeah, it went exactly as your eye rolled.
I missed that one.
Yeah, people went completely mad about it, but I took away from it the right part of it, which was, listen, we need to stop selling, get these people to start talking, educating and talking at a better level with them. That talk about the business side. Paul Redding was another guy that started this earlier. Remember, he used to call it the business solution provider, not the managed solution provider, because it was about business. Start talking about business, not technology. That's how you're going to make the connection.
So okay, so let me go back to you, Pete. Or is the idea now to take a technical person and make them into a consultative, effectively salesperson versus trying to take a salesperson to let them be a salesperson and then like hand it off after a certain point? Like where's the demarcation point?
So, that's a real iffy question.
Okay.
Some will tell you that a sales engineer will make a good salesperson because they understand the technology. But a lot of times that person needs to be coached significantly on their soft skills to break it down into understandable chunks that they can present back out. So, that's something that requires some coaching, some training and things of that nature. The nice thing about taking an SE and moving them over is they're not as price resistant change because they come from more of a technical competency of saying, you need this, and this is why you need it, and this is how we protect you. So they really present the solution outside of the price. When you bring a salesperson that's not properly trained, price is always the easy conversation, right? Somebody opens up the proposal, they look down, they look at the price, and right away that price resistance conversation is there. And my favorite line is before you even give them the proposal is in your opening meeting is rate your technology on a scale of 1 to 10, and what do you pay for it? And usually when they're at the point where they're shopping, they're at a 5 or 6, and they'll tell you the price, right? And then you say, if I could get you to an 8 or a 9, what would you pay for it? And you're testing out their price resistance. Here's some hints out here, salespeople, right? And then you can turn around and you monetized it right there in front of them. And now you have a discussion when you bring your price back and they say, but your price. And you say, yeah, but you told me you'd be willing to pay this. And I'm going to solve your pain, and I'm going to deliver you a solution that does that. And, some of the other things, like a hint, maybe for a takeaway out of here today is go to your insurance company and take your stack and give it to your underwriter and say, how does my stack, am I putting the right things in my stack that are going to help the cyber risk profile of helping these people in cyber insurance? And then go out and market that you've got a letter from the insurance carrier that says, as of this point in time, your stack will pass the underwriters.
I don't
right?
know that there's many insurance companies that have that knowledge. To be honest.
Travelers is huge.
They tell
They'll
you
do
that
it.
they tell you that they do, but I've heard some pretty ridiculous answers out of insurance companies when you.
I can tell you though, their Travelers is probably the one of the best. They've created a whole division now on an SMB can actually call their division, and that division will tell you, hey, 1 to 3 months, you need to do this from renewal. 3 to 6 months to your renewal, you should be doing this. 6 months to a year in advance, you should be doing this. And they will actually give you things that you should do. And geez, if you're an MSP boy, you should be calling that. Take that schedule for them and make that part of your solution, because now you can say, hey, we've collaborated with your insurance or one of the leading insurance providers, and we can bring that to market. Right.
Hey,
So that goes into selling your solution though, and selling an overall business concept.
I'm going to flip this all around on its ear, George,
Okay.
from a
Go for it.
standpoint of, because I think you're asking the wrong question.
Okay.
I don't think that every SE can become a good salesperson because they know the technology and they're going to go that route. And I don't think that every salesperson can do what we do, sell. I hate the word sell because I don't want them to sell. I don't think that every salesperson can go into a meeting and talk business solutions for MSP need, for end user needs. I think what has to happen is you have to build your process, and your process has to have everything that Pete just talked about: setting expectations when you walk into a meeting, understanding when to walk away, understanding. I used to set expectations on the very conversation itself. I would walk in and say, this is how the conversation is going to go. I'm going to learn a lot about your business. You're going to learn a lot about my business, and we're going to discuss some points, and then we're going to decide if there's a fit. If there's not a fit, I'm not walking away from this meeting, leaving you empty-handed. I'm going to actually refer you to some other people that may be able to help. If it is a fit, these are your next steps. So every step of the way, there was never a question of, you said this, we said that. It's all through a process. The process, every piece of the process had an expectation at the end of it, which is why 90% of the people, when they're doing these types of things, if they don't have that, you leave. I've left conversations with people where they hugged me. We love you. This is great. And I would go back to the office and think, yes, they're done. They're going to sign. And then I never heard from them again, because I didn't have a process in place that led them to what the next step was that they agreed to on, every single piece of the way. You have to make sure that you're setting those expectations, because even when they do that, the minute you leave, someone's talking to them, whatever happens, things change. There's no way, it's an easy way out, because you just left without saying anything to them. Most people leave and then say, oh, we're going to send you a quote later. By the end of that conversation, you should already have it set up, their expectations for what they should spend, why, and do they have it? What's their budget, right? Pete knows this. Pete's done this 1,000 times from a sales perspective. You build those processes and put them in place, and then you see if the right people fit the right seat for each side of those things. If you still need someone somewhat technical, because the conversations are much more security driven, from that perspective. But if you need to get someone who understands the business and can do it, it can be a sales engineer. And sometimes the salespeople can fit that role. And it's actually easier for them because they understand the pain funnel. And now they're taking it from a different approach. They're not all taking it from, I need to sell. I just need to deliver the education, let them know there's a solution to their business problem, and keep working the process.
The process, as we like to say in Pennsylvania here and on the Philly side, trust the process.
That's
Well, it
right.
didn't quite work out that way, but they at least said that. So just want to, as we're getting towards the end here, so here's the plan moving forward, and we'll touch on this as a reminder, moving forward. So obviously we, MSP Initiative, do these podcasts twice a week, 1 o'clock Eastern time, unless there's a holiday or something like that in between. But we've been doing that since March of 2020, and we'll continue to do that moving forward. And we have this planned out pretty well. So we'll be bringing in some cool topics moving forward. So you'll find that under live sessions, right? These are where the recordings of these calls in both podcast and video format end up getting parked. This year, we mentioned it earlier a couple weeks ago when we started the year, that we are parking the bus. I think the bus was great, but parking the bus, we're doing 2 in-person events, 1 in Dallas, 1 in Denver, 2 days. We're breaking it up into workshop, led by experts, right? So we're going to bring in people like some of these people that are already on the list, and they're going to, kind of paint a picture of a topic. Could be legal for Brad, could be community for Ken, could be prospecting for Ian and Carrie, or security for Matt Lee. But effectively, or, we have Pete on there too, and Kyle and Eric, and we'll add more. But the idea is we're going to paint a picture and then lead a workshop, because I can't tell you how many times me and probably you have gone to a breakout session in whatever event it was, walked away with, I should look into a couple things. 6 months later, you didn't do anything. I want you to walk away with a little bit more than an idea, something practical and tangible that you can walk out the door with. So we're doing 2 of those MSP Community Mind events. Again, Dallas, May 8 and 9, Denver, August 14, 15. And then lastly, and we know, for everybody that's ever joined us at one of these, the MSP community block parties, we have 4 tentative ones scheduled for 2023. We're still working some of the logistics and working with some of the events that we do these around in order to kind of, hash out some of the details. So we'll let you know when those are ready to be announced, but these are the ones that, you remember, right? And thanks for everyone that came out to one of these last year, especially if you're in Florida and Orlando. We somehow figured out how to get through a hurricane, force winds, and everything that came along with that, and had the All-American Rejects, which I would say was probably one of the coolest ones we've ever done. So stay tuned for that moving forward. Please keep on coming back here, 1 o'clock Eastern Time live, or you can watch the recorded versions online once they're posted. And Ken and Pete will be, I'm sure, with us throughout the way, and will also be involved in the Community Mind events coming up this year.
George, I would say that it was the best one you guys have done yet.
I would say it's going to be, we're going to have to work hard to top that one.
Yeah.
MSP
agree.
Initiative really put on a,
I'm bald, guys. There's no more hair to pull out. I'm sorry. So
let me also say real quick, George, that I know a lot of the community folks have been, coming at me about where I'm going to land since I left PAX8. I will say that in the next couple of weeks, there will be a very big announcement. I will be making a landing very soon. I want to jump into the year, and I wanted the idea was to land someplace where I could have the biggest blast radius for community. I wanted to do as much as I possibly could for the MSPs who need as much help as we can get. So look forward to that in the next couple of weeks. I'll be making an announcement. I am still tied to these events. I still will be helping George out at the Community Minds thing and jumping on that wherever I land. It's a prerequisite to wherever I go that I'm still doing these things, because I think it's important in the community. So stay tuned for that. There will be an announcement soon. And I'm just looking forward to getting back out there for 2023 and just crushing it with the community and helping everybody just get to the next level.
Yeah, hopefully without Pete having to drive his race car around town and me and you driving in a tour bus somewhere.
Yeah.
That's
Tour
okay.
bus or a U-Haul.
Now I just get to go to the places with it that I want to pull it to also, on that weekend and let it run free.
There you go. You like to race. I know. I hear.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in. This is going to be good. We like what we're, have planned for 2023. We hope you join us again. None of this is meant to be salesy. It's just networking, guys. Now, as Kenny P always says, the best part of the events that you go to are the hallway, bar, and curbside conversations, and the networking that results from that. So we're trying to make sure we make it possible and maybe learn a few things along the way. And then if there's an opportunity for you to work with someone in any facet, that's in front of you, right? Really up to you. So thank you very much, everyone. Catch you on the flip side.